some of you, many of you, I think, were there at the Temperance House. It was also the night of the infamous library party, if you know what I mean. And I'm going to do that now. Now, I just want to give you a little bit of a backdrop, though, so that it helps with the context. I remember arriving at the Temp, and I remember seeing everybody there that I knew, my friends and our townspeople, and I remember that there was a band. Help me, who's the local band that was there?
Ernie's band.
Well, it was Ernie. Right here in front of me, actually, remember. And I also made note of the location of the bar, which, as you know, who know me well, I rarely drink, but that night I made the exception. And I was just settling in and feeling comfortable when my lovely wife, Meg, came up to me and said, "I hope you're ready." And I said, "For what?" She said, "Well, you're making a toast to Kevin and Christine. It's their 50th birthday." And I said, "Of course I am." And I said, "Well, what time is that going to happen?" And she said, "At 11, when the band breaks." And it was 10:52, so I had 8 minutes, which was, I think, 3 more minutes than I had the last time this happened to me. And so I had to dig deep, and I had to really rack my brain for something because, again, this was February 2011, and unfortunately at that time Kevin's diagnosis was known to all of us. So I had to come up with something that I thought would work. And I dug through the cobwebs, and something came out. And I said, "Yeah, that's going to be good. It's going to fit here." And I've since learned that actually this was a poem. I mean, who knew? So again, for those of you who know me, it's not going to surprise you. I actually haven't read a poem since the 8th grade. But this thing came through, and it came through okay. I actually have learned since then that it was a poem, and I've gone back and I've looked at the poem, and I will tell you that I really mangled this thing. But Christine has been gracious, and she said, "You know, I want you to give your rendition, so that's what I'm going to do." And one last thing before I do that, I just want to say something else, and that is that these things are very difficult, obviously. It floods the brain with emotion, with all kinds of questions, all sorts of unanswered grappling that we all do. And I'm asking myself, why? I mean, why Kevin of all people? And, you know, life is so unfair, which it is unfair. And then I go on and I say, what can I take from this that's good? I mean, just a little shred of something that is good. And I've been turning this over, and there's not a lot. I mean, it's a tall order, let's be honest. But I've come up with something, and I want to share it with you. And it's obvious. Kevin knew how to live. We all are alive, but do we really know how to live? I mean, the time I spent with him, that rubbed off on me. He lived every day of his life like it was the last day of his life, and that was before he got sick. Afterward, forget it. He lived like that every day. We can all take that. We can bring it with us when we live here. When we leave here today, we can bring that with us. To me, that's a gift. He's given that to us. I'm going to leave here, and I'm going to take it, and going forward, I'm going to use it to make my life a little bit better for me and for the people that I love. And I want you to do the same thing. Because this can't be a total loss. There's got to be something counterbalancing it. And for me, that's it. Now, before we go on to my poem, there's one last thing. In 1 month's time, I will have forgotten completely how Kevin died. Because I refuse to acknowledge or dignify in any way the disease that took him from us. But I will tell you, in 1 month, or 1 year, or 10 years, I will never forget how Kevin lived. Now, the poem goes like this. Not as good as that. Back in the day of the sailing ship, before the age of steam and diesel power, it was customary for people who lived in a harbor town to gather on the shore and to watch as a ship set sail on a long voyage. And they would gather, and the ship would come out of the harbor, and she would hoist her sails, and the wind would fill them and draw the ship away. And she would start to slip over the horizon, and they would notice that first the hull, and then the mainsails, and the masts, and the yard arms, and the topsails. I apologize if you're not a sailor. And eventually the flags and the tip of the mast would disappear below the horizon, and they would be sad because she had gone. But they would gather up their things, and they would go back among their lives. But they would always remember and take some consolation that somewhere on a far shore across the ocean, others were waiting. And they were looking out to sea, hopefully, and one day they would notice first the top of a mast with the flags and the topsails, and eventually all of the ship and her hull and sails drawing with the sun shining in full glory had arrived. And they would rejoice. Kevin, I know you're on that far shore now, and I have a couple of requests. We're all going to be there eventually. Save some seats. Keep the beer cold. That's me personally asking for that. We love you. We miss you. We will never forget you. Godspeed, Kevin Edmonds. Please join me in a toast together.